Black Boy is Insecure. Because when I was watching them, I was like, in the sense of just like they were playing back to back. I couldn't tell the distinction between the episodes.
The first episode.
Just the second.
I think there were three. I'm being cute.
Okay, cool.
Hi, welcome to the third season of the Emmy-nominated show Drop the Mic on CCP TV, the educational channel of Community College of Philadelphia. I'm Michelle Myers, the host and co-creator of Drop the Mic. I am joined today by one of our esteemed judges, English professor Elizabeth Catanese, and Lindo Yes, the featured poet from episodes 1 and 2. The performances in season 3 of Drop the Mic, recorded in the fall of 2016, turned out to be particularly powerful, especially considering national and international events of the day. So we thought it might be useful for us to provide some perspective for viewers, and in particular this episode is the one that really prompted Alan Kobernick, our producer at CCP TV, to want to do this roundtable discussion on the Drop the Mic episodes. And so we should start with that poem. And so it's Black Cancer's poem, where he's talking about racial profiling.
Your nuts is enormous till they get cracked, and your homies tell them get back, for I throw all your ass in the pad. The law is God, and I bet against that. And I will, because I'm never with that. I will never sit back while the law try to draw, putting fear up in blacks. Fuck you, pig. If a nigga knows right, you ain't cuffing shit, bitch. I must admit, they still got advantage. It's they word over eyes when things finish. But I ain't for the Yemen or CFCF, cause they scamming. They handing time like our clocks broke, while a lot of us down and not up. Get a joy out of block bus. Fucking niggas' money and they life up in a process. Dirty, dirty, dirty.
Yeah.
And so it does express a very anti-police perspective, but it's a very personal story, you know, but it does have I want
to say it's anti-police.
Well, when I say this, when I say anti, I mean in terms of how some viewers might interpret it, how they might respond to it. They're going to simply, I don't want to make these assumptions, but we can, you know, there's a concern that perhaps some viewers will reduce the message to one of being anti-police and not hear the other parts of the message of the poem. So I'm just going to ask you both what you think about that poem.
I think for me, you know, I kind of echo your message. I think it's going to be easier for people to get offended by the fact that they hear these charged words and they're just going to dismiss the message, where I think you have to then check yourself in the sense of saying, like, if you find these words offensive, and the word that he used is pig, and he used a few other adjectives to describe these police officers as pigs. If you're more offended by the use of the word versus the crime and the assault being done, then we have a really big problem. In the sense of just like, these individuals are here to protect and serve. And if they're more concerned about like these words being used in the sense of just like, oh, you made me feel bad and da-da-da-da-da-da, versus like someone's being killed and we don't know why. And these people are being assaulted every day. Like every day the Department of Justice pulling out that people are being profiled significantly and causing like so much trepidation in their life, and it been happening for generations now that it doesn't make sense. You know, this happened in Baltimore, this happened in Chicago recently, a statement been put out by the Department of Justice saying that there have been so many individuals that clearly they have been profiled, they've been arrested without any evidence of a crime, and this made their day harder, that you have this response from that conditioning. Like how, I'm sorry, like I'm really, because like to me it's just like, you're missing out on the message if you're so distracted by the word. And these people are paid to protect and serve. They should be more focused on the crimes and things that are happening and figuring out why these things are happening. How can I do a better job? Versus like these words, like these, let him get off what he needs to get off, because he's going through a lot and this has been proven, you know? So that's my feelings on it. I feel like if people dismiss that, why are they dismissing that? You know, why are they not more offended that George Zimmerman is still around? Why are they more offended that 6 officers, somehow a truck killed Freddie Gray? Like, why we not more offended by that than offended by the fact that, you know, these individuals in these communities have harbor so much oppression by these individuals that are supposed to protect and serve. They're trying to trust the government to do their job, but yet 6 individuals are now about to get their whole life set free, vacation pay and all these things, and we're supposed to believe that a truck killed a guy. When he went into the truck, you know, unharmed, breathing and stuff like that. So I think if he's want to, you know, call these individuals pigs, he's talking about the few that we're not convicting of these crimes that have so much evidence of doing wrongdoing. And if the shoe doesn't fit, don't worry about it. Let's worry about when the shoe does fit and we're not prosecuting these individuals.
Why do you think that people, so you're asking the question sort of like why do you think people get offended? Like if you were to go into the minds of someone who watches it and says like, I can't look at this, it's so offensive, emotional to me, like what, rather than what you would say to them, why do you think that's happening? Like what's happening inside those people's minds?
I don't know. You know, I think my feelings about it is like, you want to, there's a couple of things that come in my mind. It's just like individuals of color are not considered equal. That just is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, and by the people that protect and serve them, that's supposed to protect and serve them, they know that since they're not perceived as equal, that I can get away with a lot more. There's not going to be no legal prosecution or anything that could be done for me that, you know, takes away my job or takes away my position of power, so I have less consideration. And I think it's hard for people to believe that because it's not of their first experience. It's not of their first person experience. So no matter how much, you know, comes out, I think it's easier for people to be in this, you know, shelter of like, well, I had an all right encounter with them, or when I didn't have a you know, all right encounter with them, I got some type of like, you know, something that showed a sense of resolve, you know what I'm saying? But that's not the case. It's not a case like for everybody, and they just don't want to believe that. And then I also think they feel as though like it's hatred. You know, it's just, I don't want to be taken away from my position of power. And these people are an extension of my power, and I want them to always be that arm that I could then push out these individuals I don't like. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God, these black individuals, these people of colors are at my pool. This is a public pool. This is a public pool. Let's get them out because their music's so loud. What? Everybody's playing their music. Everybody's music is, you know, trying to vibe out. But it is in the sense of like, I want this, and I don't want anyone else to have it, and they're going to be an extension of my arm. And then I also think America hasn't dealt with the fact that the history of police officers. So we deal with like, oh, this feels as though like, oh, this is just such a moment of now, and they're just complaining about it. But these individuals have always been good. No, these individuals came from bounty hunters that used to take, you know, individuals that ran away from the plantation, or individuals that, you know, had their freedom papers, ripped them out, and brought them back to these plantations, brought them back to these auction blocks, and then after the Civil War, they became police officers. And then, you know, you write in something in a document that if you criminalize these individuals that are now free, you can then put them back on a plantation. You can say, well, criminals don't have rights, so if I make every one of these individuals criminals, I can still get out the same service I wanted out of slavery. And then you have individuals that get arrested for crimes that could just be rehabilitated, or, you know, just get a fine and move about their day, but instead they get these harsh punishments. And you have generations that have dealt with this over and over. My parents, your parents, their parents. That you have this sense of like a response that comes out in Black Cancer poem when he says, these pigs, you know, these dirty pigs. Because he's talking about these individuals within the system that are doing things that are oppressing individuals, and it's clearly there.
I think one of the aspects of it that's hard for people is the call and response aspect. So he was asking people to say dirty pigs. So that's that's a very intense thing to have happen, right? Because you're asking the audience to really participate in your anger, even though they haven't had time to process exactly what your poem's about, right? So this is putting the audience in a position of extreme discomfort. And I think we saw that in the moment where the audience at first wasn't participating as loudly, right? But then by the end that they were participating. And from my perspective, the poem enacted some of the difficulty of being profiled, of being, Black Cancer in his experience not wanting to be called out, like slammed on the car, all of these things, and going about his daily business and then being asked to do something that was really traumatic. So I think in that sense, it is a very uncomfortable poem, but it enacts the pain that it's talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think also we the reason why I bring up this is historical, this is generational. Is Tupac has this quote where he says when you're really hungry and you're looking for help, and you might knock on your neighbor's door, and you knock and you say, oh, please, can you help me give me some food? And then you don't get a response, but you see everybody's eating. Matter of fact, they're throwing away some of their food that they have as leftovers. So you knock even harder. Your knock becomes a bang. Bang, bang, please, can you help me out? I'm hungry. And they still just eat and throwing away their leftovers that they could have helped you out with. And then that bang becomes now you're kicking at the door. And then you finally knock it down, and you finally just take the leftovers that they wasn't going to eat. And you complain a while, why do you leave me out in this cold? Why? We're supposed to be neighbors. I have helped you out before. I have done services for you before. And that's what we're happening here. So when he says pigs, it's coming out of historically, there's been moments where it's just been the knock that led to the bang, led to the kicking, and then led to the knocking of the door, because we see individuals on video that the police officers pull a drive-by on individuals and no one gets prosecuted. We saw Tamir Rice get pulled a drive-by on. He didn't get read his rights. He didn't get asked why he's doing there. He wasn't given no benefit of doubt. And when we talked about this in last episode, when we talk about white privilege, is in a sense of just not saying these individuals are not, not working hard or all those other things. We're saying the benefit of doubt. The benefit of doubt that, is given to these individuals that are white versus people of color. And that's what Tamir Rice didn't get. And that's what, Black Cancer is talking about. When I get profiled, I'm not given the benefit of right. I'm not given maybe there was a sense of urgency while I was speeding. Let me ask this person that. No, he's a criminal. I'm going to arrest him right here in a moment. I'll make him feel as uncomfortable as possible. And do that versus saying all right, I'm supposed to protect and serve, and I see someone that might cause a danger not only to himself but others. So let me ask them to stop speeding. Let me figure out why he's speeding. Let me figure out what's going on in his day to make sure that I'm serving him, but at the same time protecting him and protecting the individuals around him. So maybe at the end of the day it just leads to a fine, but a lot of times it leads to a really, really hard day for us. And then sometimes we're not speeding. It just there's this effing with us.
When we talk about these issues, it reminds me of a poem by, a line from a poem by a Vietnamese American poet whose name is Val Fee. And in this poem he says, tell me whether or not you fear the police and I'll tell you what color you are. And so, what I would, in terms of what that makes me think of, and just listening to Lindo, for folks who do, see the police officers as people who are out there putting because this is what people say who defend the police, right? They're out there, they're putting their lives on the line every single day. They have a, very stressful job, right? They sacrifice themselves, they say all these things, right? And many times the people who say those things have had those kinds of experiences with police officers where they view them as people who are protecting and serving the community. Those are the experiences they've had. And they don't have those experiences where they've had, negative, where they feel like they've been mistreated by police. And so in order to kind of as we've been trying to talk about each episode, how do we have these breakthrough moments where we can say to someone who might not agree, right, with the viewpoints that are being expressed, but we still want them to kind of listen, is to just consider this. Just because you may have not had that experience doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. You know what I mean? And it just kind of open yourself to the possibility that people are, as Black Cancer's talking about in this poem, just riding in a car with 4 other friends, and for no reason other than they're African American men in a car being pulled over, you know what I mean? And then being treated as harshly as they're being treated. Being treated roughly, being treated in a way where they're being verbally abused for no reason, right? And just be open to the possibility that these things happen, even if you yourself have not experienced those things.
And I find that, again, from like my identity as a white professor, there is, so I think it's human nature sometimes. So if you have, like, in a really benign example, if you have a class and like there are two people who are on task and they are doing an awesome job, but overall the class isn't, and then those two people, so then the whole class gets like a bad participation grade or something, and those people are like, well, wait, I was doing the right thing, like why, I don't understand like why we all got punished for this. And I think that there's a parallel that sometimes when students, if you've had, if you see yourself, so I see myself as a pretty accepting individual who wants to have dialogue, but I think that there is this feeling that some people who are white, that you can't listen to what other people are saying that are negative against other white people, that somehow that means that the people are targeting you as being a bad person. But I think it's really important to listen to all stories. Like, I really want to hear about it. If a student is saying, I had this, professor who was white who did X, Y, Z, and I felt this way. Like, I want to know, because I feel like it's important that we all be listeners of other people's stories and really hear what people are saying, to, if not to be immediately helpful, to at least acknowledge other people's pain.
Right.
What is that called, like white fragility or something like that? Yeah, that's something that like it's very true.
Yeah, and putting yourself in that place, like if you were Black cancer and you were the one being pulled over and you were the one being treated this way, wouldn't you feel as though that you would be justified in your anger? Well, that's how Black cancer feels. He feels as though he's justified in his anger. So when he's expressing that anger and when he's saying dirty pigs, that's an expression of that anger. And I think anybody in his situation would have, been very, very, having these hostile feelings about what the police officers did. Anybody, it doesn't matter what race. If you feel as though you're being treated unfairly, treated in this way where you're being targeted because of, the perceived color of your skin, if you felt like that's how you're being treated, you definitely would be extremely angry and perhaps lash out.
The idea is not to create more violence, but
Right.
to stop it, right?
Exactly.
To make this not happen.
To make this
people
not happen.
violent.
Exactly.
We also have to acknowledge that there's a conditioning that has happened throughout generations with just our confrontations with police officers, with individuals that are supposed to protect and serve. There's numbers being put out saying that it makes sense for an individual that is of color to run from the police officer because they have it's more likely for them to get shot or harmed by a police officer within their custody. That's just a fact that the numbers have shown that. And so therefore, like, there's a heightened sense of just like threat, in the sense of just like every time you get pulled over, you're wondering, can I de-escalate this situation? Can I make sure I get home safe? Because I know I could be harmed and nothing can be done about it. Nothing will be done about it. I just become a hashtag. And that's a scary experience. And if I think you also have to take that in when you're just like, I could die tonight over maybe going 5 miles above the speeding limit, because this confrontation may be taken further because I said what's up versus hi. Anything that could create any sense of resistance in that perceived notion. So like anybody that feels as though like, oh, well, he's not complying. What is complying? We have seen videotapes of a 100-pound young lady who was 13-year-old be pressed to the ground saying that you're suffocating me by an officer that at least weighs more than 80 pounds to her. Is like, was she resisting? You know what I'm saying? So like, police officers have a hard job because normally when you're calling them in the worst case scenarios most of the time. They're not called for birthday parties to show up. So yeah, let's give that credit there. But also they have a lot of resources given to them. They have bulletproof vests. They have so many resources they can call backup and all these things. and I just have myself. You know what I'm saying? I'm scared because it could be an army out there. You know, you see 5 police officers behind you and you know the history of what could happen. Like Martin Luther King protests is like, oh, he was, I don't want to say he was a pacifist, but it's like it was peaceful protest, but he was getting hosed down. I mean, dogs were, eating individuals, people being brutally hurt. So you want to bring up like, oh, let's just be peaceful. If you comply, let's bring up Martin Luther King and all that stuff. I hate when they do that to pacify this notion of just complying. It's more than that, because even in peaceful protests, individuals are hurt and harmed, and you know that threat is there by people that are supposed to protect and serve, and you know they have more resources than you, and you know the law is on their side. So we can talk about good cops, but when the bad cops are doing bad things, where are the good cops testifying, informing these individuals and making the community feel safe? Because I seen a co-worker of mine do something that was bad. Where are they? So I feel like we have to understand all that anguish and how it boiled up to that point to understand the frustration that's coming out of Black Cancer Peace. And I think we should respect that. And anybody that feels as though like, oh, well, if he complied or if he wasn't going over the speed limit, it's more than that. It's way more than that. You know, it's way more than that.
I mean, we could really talk about this for over several episodes, but and I really wish we could do that, but I do feel like perhaps we should talk about some of the other poems, because this was a very heavy episode actually. There were so many really heavy topics, and I do want to talk about Gavin's poem, because their poem was so important. We've never had a poem on this topic before, talking about rape culture, but also like deaf culture too, and so she kind of combines those two issues in the same poem. So powerful, such a powerful poem. And so I don't know if either of you want to talk about that poem and more specific. I mean, I have things to say, but I want to give you both an opportunity.
I think for me it was about how language mirrors emotional experience. So they were talking about, in sign language, the idea of the partial deletion, that as I understood it, that the sign for rape culture for rape is an abbreviated sign.
Yes.
And that for Gavin was similar to the emotional quality of being raped, or of not being acknowledged, or of violence. It's the removal of some aspect of a word, of a story, that they were really bringing to the forefront. This blame the victim, in rape culture, that somehow as a woman, if you have been sexually assaulted or raped, then somehow you did something to bring it on. It must have been the way you were dressed, or you must have said something to make the man think that it was, that you wanted him or you desired him. So blaming the victim, and then when the woman, tries to speak out about what has happened to her, then being dismissive of her and her experience, you know what I mean? So there's the added trauma on that, you know what I mean, of the silencing of the individual who has been raped, and so that the sexism in that, the misogyny in that, right? I mean, such a powerful piece that they shared, in terms of trying to make sure that this topic was being discussed.
Yeah, I think moments like this, I feel really privileged to just shut up and listen, because to me, it's about understanding these issues, because it's so normal, and I know that I'm in a place of just not having a first person experience of them, but I know it's so normal that I need to know about these experiences so I can rally and become a better ally. And for me, hearing a poem, it was saddening, because it's just it shouldn't be normal. And I think the more I hear male individuals excuse these actions, the more and more I'm scared that we have so much more work to do and we haven't moved further. And and the laws are not helping us either. There's still, even in this issue, there's still white male privilege. We see people that have, there was a swimmer recently who got 6 months probation, because he's a good kid. You know, he has a bright future ahead of him, but he traumatized an individual that now will never be able to live out the rest of their days the same. And that's the element of rape culture that we gotta fix. And when she spoke her piece, I just was like, I need to hear more about this. I need to know more about this. How can I rally behind, creating a resolve? What are these action steps outside of this poem? Because we have to do something more to allow this not to be normal, and it's too normal.
Yeah. But the other thing, all of this is like so important, and women in general having this experience, women who have been sexually assaulted, raped, the sharing that experience and feeling not having the language to be able to express themselves. But then she adds the added element of being deaf. And the language, and then the even more of a silencing, to be a woman who is deaf, right? And not even being able to have the sign, like you were, as you were explaining it earlier, Elizabeth. You know what I mean? It's an abbreviated sign, for rape. So like even, so it really magnifies the idea, right? The issue of women being silenced and the women not having the language, right? But then to think about being a woman who's deaf and having to express oneself through sign language, already not being heard by, a large segment of the population who can't read sign language, who can't, speak or communicate through sign language. And then even within the deaf community itself, how there is this added silencing. You know what I mean? Like you get I'm trying to express how complex the layers
so
are
many
here, and I
layers.
can't do just because it's such a powerful book. I can't even do justice to this piece. It's,
she there's a stellar work she's putting out there, and I think she's bringing awareness that is very much needed, because this is a topic that needs to be taught more, so we stop allowing people to excuse it, stop allowing people to dismiss it, because it is being dismissed so often, and it makes individuals that survive these experiences feel as though they can't report it, they can't talk about it. It makes it even harder for them to endure, because they don't feel as though anybody's going to support them in that and get injustice. And just being a male, I just want to like make sure these spaces are safe. And when she did her poem, when they did their poem, I was just like, let's listen. Let's listen, and then afterwards let's figure out a resolve, you know?
Yeah.
And also, as a judge, Gavin's poems were so multi-layered, it was hard to catch every little piece. So in some senses, I wish we could air the poem, all the poems like twice, have them do it and then to do it again, so that you can really absorb all of the lines.
It had a lot of rewindable moments where you're like, oh man, what's going on here?
Right.
And they said this and they said this, wow.
Right.
And then it's like they said a lot of things where it's just like, all right, I'm gonna look this up later to figure out what I can do to help. And that's I think with all the pieces, I think it's important to hear the poem and recognize these individuals' emotions in them, but also rally behind something that will, create some change that is, makes sense for you, makes sense for what's going on in your life.
And what was really beautiful was there was audience participation with this poem too, where she had everyone at the end sign the sign applause. And I mean that really brought me, the whole poem was emotional, but the ending part was just really beautiful, how the audience was with her at the end with that applause sign. Well, I wish we had more time, but
we need more time.
Yes, it is such a great episode. And so here it is, Season 3, Episode 4 of the 2-time Emmy-nominated Drop the Mic. Enjoy. Oh my God.